Yeah.
All right, back in today with Jessica is kind of the light setting. Again, the weather isn't working out, so what I've got here is my kind of fake window with a light behind it. It gives you the effect that you would have normally with some sort of window light. Essentially, what happens when sunlight comes through a window is that it diffuses, it softens. So it takes this little kind of pinpoint light, which is hard to think about, you know, this big gigantic sun being a little pinpoint light, but it's really, really far away. So it ends up being a really, really harsh light. That's why shooting at noon on a sunny day is the worst thing that you can do, because you get, number one, the light that comes almost straight down on the subject, like enhancing shadows and eye sockets and stuff like that. But you get this real harsh, ugly light, so it's better to shoot even if it's overcast at high noon, because the clouds work as essentially a big screen like this to soften that light and disperse it across a greater plane. So anytime you have a window, you've got a screen in your window. Generally, you've got a screen in your window, and that screen does that same kind of thing. It takes that light and scatters it out and breaks it apart. If you ever hear of studio light, talk about a honeycomb, that's essentially what that does. It looks just like a honeycomb, and what it does is it breaks the light out so that it's not such a harsh beam. And things like mini blinds, if it's really, really hot light coming through, you put the mini blinds down, you've got a nice soft white light coming through. But I want to show you a few different tricks today on how to shoot window light portraits, because they're kind of fantastic. It's one of the easiest things to do to get really, really nice lighting setups and really nice photos out of people. So with Jessica here, I'm going to just kind of move her around. If you want to come closer to the screen here. When you're shooting window light portraits, you've got one aspect here that's kind of the most important, is the proximity of the subject to the window. And if you can see here, when she's right up against the window, it's nearly completely blown out. I should probably zoom in here on her so we can get a better idea of what we got. So we can see right up against the window that the light falls really far around her face, wraps really far, and around her neck, and all of the light kind of just takes over the scarf, and you don't see any of the kind of details or folds in it. It's really folded up and wadded up. Even in her shirt, you can't see any of the real details that you have in there. So if you can move like one big step towards me. As you pull your subject away then from the window, what happens? That light softens up. The big light drops off quicker. Harsh light doesn't drop off as fast and will wrap around. So as you pull your subject away, that light's going to soften up and drop off a lot quicker. So you're just going to get a nice kind of shading and light around the face to kind of illustrate the way things are. It's a fairly open room here, so even though we've got our one fake light, we've still got a wall of windows that are open with a really, really overcast, rainy sky. And so there's still a good amount of light coming in here. And that can help you out. All the lights above are turned off. You want to do that because then you avoid all those other shadows of the light falling in, however that may be. The other thing you want to think about is I've got this big, gigantic reflector here, is to take and reflect some of that light back into your subject. Because even though we've got a nice light here, some of you, especially with the point and shoots, what you may end up with is a really dark area on the shadow, because you can't really see or pick up that difference in the light. So as we move this reflector around, you can see as it's bouncing here that we've got light coming back into her cheek area here on the side and brightening up that subject. And again, as you pull this back, the light is going to drop off but give you that same kind of effect. And with light, it's kind of an inverse, I don't think it's an inverse, it's a quarter effect. For every bit twice that you move the light away, it's a quarter as bright. All right? So if we go 1 foot away or one amount of the distance away, it's going to be a quarter as bright. Same thing if we move her towards her, it's going to be 4 times as bright. So that way if you come right up against the window. Let me you said, this light's four times as bright. Looks like it's totally blowing out our highlights here, totally wrapping around the face. If we put this reflector right here again, hopefully not claustrophobic, but now she's totally just blown out, highlights white, and you can't really tell that she's in a window light situation. Now if you don't have a big piece of aluminum based lighting, simple things, poster board, you know, you can put some poster board up against somebody and just step back a little bit here. And you can see that you can get that same effect here with just a piece of white board. You can take this same thing, you can wrap it with aluminum foil, bounce some of the light back. You can use mirrors, you can use a bunch of different things, just anything that'll bounce light back. But remember that you're going to bounce the color back as well. So as we put a reflector here, we're putting a little bit of that light back into the face. And the good thing about having something handheld is that you can angle that light wherever you might need it. If you want to lighten up the area under the chin a little bit, you can do that. Like if the scarf is causing too much of a shadow on the neck, you can put something here and brighten that area up. You can put it down. Can you do one of these things with your chin? You do that with your, yeah, remember the high school photos, you know, the graduation photos? You generally put a white board down in front of you, so you end up with that kind of light just bouncing off of that back into your face. Sometimes shooting in a studio situation, you'll put just piece of big white board on the floor and point a strobe down at it, just bounce that light off the floor back into somebody, essentially making a big softbox out of that. So with any of those things, that's a good way to go through and look at the portrait. Things you want to avoid when you're shooting a window light portrait is generally getting the window. What's going to happen is if you're shooting through the window, it's nice and soft and diffused here with the scrim that we have. But if it's actually sunny out, that light is totally going to blow everything out. If you remember with your meters, everything meters to an 18% gray. So if you're shooting into that big bright glob of white here, your camera's going to want to make that gray. So everything here is going to be blown out. All of that nice little shadow that you had here is just going to be completely black. And then you're going to have white here with no details outside whatsoever. So you want to find an angle that isn't really going to shoot into the subject, or into the window, I'm sorry. And that means you have to sometimes get kind of creative with your positioning. The other thing you need to look at is what's in the background. We can see here we've got a couple paintings and a doorway. You can actually on here pick up the difference in the light. You can see it's nice and cool and blue in here and yellow in the other room. It's because the white balance of the camcorder is set for a kind of cloudy thing here. We've got these big fluorescent lights in the other room, so you can see the color difference there. And what you want to do is look at all of those things. Think about your camera settings. Longer focal length, closer to the person, wider aperture will blur out that background. Again, if you're using a point and shoot, take advantage of the settings that come with those cameras. You've got your portrait and your landscape and all those generic settings as well. Obviously, you can come to a portrait type setting and that'll give you this kind of effect here. Just because you're not at, fireworks doesn't mean you don't need to use fireworks setting on your camera. So come to some sort of portrait setting, set your white balance maybe to something cloudy, maybe sunny depending on how bright that light is coming in the house. Play with those a little bit and see how you can get that light to kind of wrap around the subject. And take advantage of what's in the background. You can always move things around. Sheets sometimes work. You can put, if you're just doing just a headshot, you can hold a piece of board behind them or have someone else hold a piece of board behind them. And that gives you a nice clear background and you can just crop the photo down to just the head, and shoot at that range. So take advantage and think about what's there. Maybe the things in the room kind of enhance the portrait or the feeling of the person that's there. So if you get a little bit of their office involved as well, if that's possible, go through and use that and utilize that. I know I've made a fake window here. I actually want you to do this with a window, not with a light through a bed sheet or something like that. So it helps you situationally to be able to walk into a room and assess the lighting that's in there and tell, okay, I've got windows here, I should put my subject here and shoot from this angle. Notably, most important, don't shoot into the window, watch the background. There's been a couple even here in the room, you see an exit sign like right above somebody's head. Or if there's a pole or something, you look like you've got something coming out of the top of somebody's head. So watch those kinds of things, and good luck with this shoot.